All right, so we're ready to get these toes set up here, and we have to try and figure out exactly how we're going to do that. The important thing is that the toes follow this joint at the end of the day, because we are going to make it so this joint can move. So we need to find a way to track that joint, and we need to make that joint also follow in here with the foot. Now, to track the joint isn't too hard. What we can do is use a locator. So I could go ahead and create a locator here and snap it to this foot and do a modify freeze transform. And we're just going to make this our L foot underscore locator. That way we know what this is. And I can duplicate this across, Control D, snap to vertex, and we can make this our R foot locator. So that way we have it set up for the other side, because anything we have to do on one side, we have to do on the other. Now, this locator is going to play an important role because we want it to follow with the ball here. The way we can do that is we can simply select the ball, shift select the locator, and do a constrained parent. And we can just go ahead and make sure maintain offset is checked. That way it doesn't get the orientation, it just stays put, and we won't have any issues, and we'll just hit apply. And we'll do it to the other side too. Select the foot, shift select the locator, and hit apply. So now, whenever this foot moves, whenever that joint moves, that locator is going to move. And we need that there to give the toes something to follow. Because remember, when we break the hierarchy, they need to follow a curve, but we can't have them follow the ankle curve, because then if we make it so this joint can move, we're going to have an issue. And we're actually going to make this joint move through the IK handles we set up, because you'll see if I move this IK handle and I turn on the proxy geo, we can actually make that move just fine. So we're going to set up a control for that to make that move. All right. So to get the toes moving with it, we need to have these locators. Now, the toes are just a simple FK setup. So if you want to challenge yourself, feel free to give that a shot. I'm going to come up here to Windows, General Editor, and we're going to pull up our hypergraph hierarchy so it's a little bit easier to work with. It looks like I already had it on the screen, but it shrunk down. And we can start with our nulls and our curves. So let's begin. I'll start by just clicking off of everything and Control G to get my null. And I can do both toes at a time. Why not? I can then select the joint, shift select the null. We can do our constrained parent and just make sure maintain offset is off for this and hit apply. Delete that constraint and then parent the curve underneath. Then we can do the same here. Go from our joint to our null, apply, delete the constraint, select the curve, shift select the null, P to parent, highlight both curves, modify freeze transform, then we can go the curve to the joint and hit apply, curve to the joint and hit apply. And now we can stack our hierarchy. So remember, we're going to come to the front, hit up to get to the child null, shift select the base and hit P to parent. And if I go ahead and turn on my proxy geo now, you can see that this toe here will control the base joint, and then this one here will give us some control over the claw. So just like that, we have the ability to control those toes. And we can go ahead and move over to the next one. So let's go ahead and Control G to get our null, go joint to null, do our constraints, delete the constraint, select the control, P to the null, modify freeze transform, and then we can just come curve into joint and hit apply. So that way it works. And if we rotate that, there we go. Now we can do the next one. So select off everything, G to create our null, select the joint, shift select the null. We'll go ahead and hit apply, delete, parent the curve underneath, modify freeze transform, and then go ahead and select the curve, shift select the joint, and apply that constraint. And that way it's set. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take this as the child, hit up, take this as the parent, P to parent, and there we go. Now we'll have our toe rotating. If we turn on that proxy geo, there you go. Okay, and one last one to do. So I'm going to do this quickly. GG to get our nulls, select the first joint to the first null, hit apply. Maybe move this so I'm not covering that. Second joint to the second null, hit apply. Delete both of those. Remember the order we did these in. We did the big one first, P to parent the curve under. Did that one second, P to parent the curve under. Modify, freeze transform, select the curve, shift select the joint, hit apply, select the curve, shift select the joint, hit apply. And then we'll go ahead and take the child, hit up, and take the curve, and P. And now if we double check this, we should have our toes moving. And if we take all our curves now here for the toes and we select them simultaneously and we use the rotates together, these should rotate inward and outward in the same direction if we have the correct orientation. And that looks great. And we could move them in the same directions here. And we're good to go. So that's going to set up the toes for this control. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to tie them into the rig, because you're going to see we have a bit of an issue where they just don't follow that. So this is why we needed that locator, because we need to tie these into the rest of the rig. So what we're going to do is take the top null of each of these groups we just made on our toes, Control G, and we're going to make this our L toe rig underscore group. Then we're going to hit D and V to snap to the ball, and just hit D again to exit. And from here, we're going to take the locator now as the driver. We're going to shift select the toe rig, and we're going to do a parent constraint with maintain offset on and hit apply. And that will make it so now the toes are following that locator is following the joint, and that joint is being controlled by the IK handle and the stabilizers. So now this will move, and all our toes should also function here, where we can position these individually with these controls. Just like that. Really cool. All right, so that is going to set up one foot. As a challenge, go ahead and get your first foot set up using this method. And then when you come back, we're going to go ahead and do the other foot to get that set up. We do have to do everything twice, but it's good for practice. Okay, so let's go ahead and tackle the next foot, and we're going to do this one rapid fire. The first thing to do is make sure you turn off your maintain offset, because remember, we need to have that off to do the nulls correctly. So don't make the mistake of leaving that on if you're just continuing this after setting up the other foot. The first step that I'm going to want to do is create 6 nulls. So I'm going to hit Control G to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Remember, I'm clicking off each time. From there, I can select the joint, shift select the null, hit apply. Select the joint, shift select the null, and this time I can hit G to repeat last command. Select the joint, select the null, hit G. 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 Highlight all those constraints we just made and delete. We can then select the curve, shift select the null and P, select the curve, null, P, curve, null, P, curve, null, P, curve, null, P, curve, null, P. We can highlight our curves. We can do a modify for use transforms. We can then take the curve to the joint and apply a constraint. Then curve to joint and G, curve to joint, G, curve to joint, G, curve to joint, G, curve to joint, G. We can highlight all of the nulls, Control G. We'll make this our R toe rig underscore group. We can then hit W to move, D to access the pivot, V to snap, D to set pivot. We can switch this back to maintain offset. Select the locator, shift select the toe rig group, hit apply, and that should all be set up. So if we go ahead and turn on our proxy geo now, those toes should follow just fine. And if we come in here to the individual toes and we shift select these controls here, and we try them out in terms of rotations, they should all rotate correctly. Now it does look like I'm getting a slight issue there, which I'm curious what the issue is. And the issue is we didn't rebuild our hierarchies. So when you're going fast, you gotta be careful. Now, not the end of the world. I can actually just rebuild them now, which is kind of interesting. If I come to each top null here and I just shift P these, that will go ahead and get those out of there. And we can go ahead and hit this here, hit our up arrow, and just P back to the other curve. So if you're going fast, just be aware that you'll probably make a mistake, especially if you're teaching, because, you know, everything's supposed to go right the first time. But the nice thing is you can understand how to undo it. So now we can put all these individually under the toe rig here, and that should give us a good go of things. So take your time with it when you're starting out. Don't make mistakes going too fast. But understand that once you get used to it, you can go a lot faster than what we're starting with. And also, always, always, always remember to check your work. Very important to do that because you might find a mistake along the way. That saves you a lot of time to fix now and saves you a headache later. Okay, so all those are functioning good. We've repaired it correctly and we're good to go. All right, so that is going to get our legs complete. So at this point, we have almost every control on our rig finished. There's just a hidden control we haven't talked about that we need to get set up, which is something called a reverse foot. And then we need to tie all these together and clean up our seam. So with that said, as a challenge, what I want you to do is go ahead and try finishing up your feet. Hopefully this is a good reminder to watch through the recordings before following along so you don't make the same mistakes I did. But hopefully it won't be too much of a challenge for you and you will get those feet set up no problem. All right, so go ahead and get those set up, get those toes finished and attached to there, and I'll see you in the next one. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can catch the next video in the series when it goes live.